What up, dogs? I hope you're having a bat-tastic day, and in this video we're going to dive into the deep cuts of our favorite frog-themed DJ, Lucio. So as I stated in previous lore videos, the timeline of Overwatch is a puzzle. Certain dates haven't been set in stone yet by the creative team, and ergo, that leads to quite a bit of approximation. However, using the information provided from multiple different sources, character bios, visual sourcebooks, dev talks, I'm confident we are within a few years of the correct dates. And it honestly appears that the creative talents like Chris Metzen or Michael Chu are working with the same puzzle. I don't believe they have exact dates either, and I think that that's intentional. There's much more leeway this way if they decide to add some exact dates later on in the future. So if you see some lore masters quoting a date that is off a few years, I wouldn't worry about it. Everything is far enough into the future that it's all within the same zone. With that, if we continue to follow the notion that the game is taking place,
the story takes place something like 60 years in the future, right?
Then that would place the current year in Overwatch at 2077. There are two variables in my equation. One, I'm counting the 60 years quote to have begun at the time of the game's release in 2016 instead of the BlizzCon announcement in 2014, as it just feels more official. Furthermore, I'm taking some assumption that time is continuously progressing during the game. Events like the Infiltration Short and Doomfist attack at Ottawa International, the holiday events, and along with characters such as Orisa being 1 month old, lead me to believe that time is flowing like normal within the Overwatch universe. So the game would have began in 2076, and it's almost a year later in 2077. Enter Lucio Correa dos Santos. Lucio was born around the year 2050 in Rio de Janeiro, which is on the eastern coast of South America. This would have been roughly 4 years after the start of the Omnet Crisis. Lucio grew up in a crowded favela, which are slums in Brazil populated mainly by the homeless and poor. Rio was hit hard by the financial upheaval left in the wake of the crisis, and it's important to remember that no matter how long the actual crisis lasted, most people would remember it well, and even the younger ones, such as Lucio, still to this day would feel the effects of the fallout from the war. We don't know if there was a battlefield in Brazil during the crisis, but regardless, cities all around the world were attacked. And afterwards, Brazil began, like most of the rest of the world, the long process of recovery, trying to get back to a life before the crisis. When Lucio was young, he saw struggles living all around him. Based on his skins, which have at other times shown to be part of the lore, I would like to imagine that he would play hockey and football in the streets of the favela with sticks and rocks. Simple kids forgetting how hard their lives were and just having a good time. Lucio wanted to find a way to lift the spirits of his people, and at some point discovered the musical art of disc jockeying. He found his answer in music and the power to bring people together, and like hockey, forget their troubles, if only for a short time, as most people can relate to. Have you ever put on an album and just laid back on your bed with headphones and just totally lost yourself in the music? Have you ever sang passionately in your car while driving? Wept to a particular romantic song after a breakup? Music is part of the human culture that has likely been around since before humans dispersed across the globe. It can spark very intimate emotions out of people and affect their moods to great lengths. A great director once said a film should always aim to spark an emotional reaction, and that's the ideal that I believe Lucio was drawn to as well. I think Lucio wanted to be more than just a DJ, he wanted to be an artist. The idea of how his crossfade ability works, I think, plays far better this way. It's the same concept behind the Bard class in classic fantasy games. A drums of war kind of thing, where armies would play music to intimidate their enemies, instead of having the ability tied to any sort of nanobiology like Mercy or Ana. Lucio started performing his music on street corners and block parties, building a name for himself. I'd love to see a proto-origin skin of a young hustling Lucio with more street clothes on, or a homemade version of his Deadmau5-inspired Ribbit skin, a young Lucio lugging around all his crappy equipment and homemade theatrics. At some point during this time, Lucio took on a frog as his symbol, named Cambo. Cambo is the name of a frog poison cleanse that is used for various applications, such as cleansing the soul and purging toxins and eliminating bad luck from the body and spirit, so it falls right in line with Lucio's own motivations, and it's apparent why he would use it to represent his music. As he got older, he performed at a string of apparently legendary underground shows, since we're later told that Lucio plans to stream his current tour to watchers at home with a holovid service, and including the multiple other mentions of the holovids within Overwatch. I'd like to imagine that his underground performances were recorded and shared by the audience and went semi-viral, similar to a tweet. The trajectory of Lucio's music career seemed to going nowhere but up. But then came Vishkar, a mega multinational corporation based in India. We'll dig deeper into the Vishkar Corporation during the History of Symmetra video. Essentially, after the Omnic Crisis, Vishkar used a radical technology called Hardlight, similar to Green Lantern, to weave new and self-sustaining cities for India's displaced populace. This would have to be an amazing and powerful tool, though it's unknown if Vishkar were the developers of Hardlight or if it was simply considered radical to use, as the first mention of it can be traced to a cover of a Russian magazine with no mention of Vishkar on the cover. This mega-powerful mega-corporation maintains a vision of a perfect society and are attempting to spread the company's influence around the globe. And eventually, around the years 2074, they made their way to Rio de Janeiro under a contract to redevelop large tracts of the city. The people of Rio had been told that Vishkar would improve their favelas and their lives. I imagine in the beginning this was amazing news and there would have been much celebration around the city. I also like to think that with his optimistic nature, even Lucio didn't see past Vishkar's more diabolical intent at the beginning. However, that promise never came to be, and in exchange Vishkar imposed controls over the people of Rio under the guise of building a more orderly society. They enforced curfews, and even though they weren't law enforcement, they cracked down on what the company perceived to be as lawless behavior. This shows how powerful a megacorp can be in the Overwatch universe. Vishkar developed a sonic technology that was used to suppress the masses. This is pure speculation, but I imagine that's why they chose to go to Rio in the first place, to test that technology out. And since Rio was struggling so much, it's likely they knew its people would be the perfect guinea pigs. I also like to imagine a scene where a Rio citizen stands outside their newly formed Hardlight home, and a row of identical homes, and over a speaker on the street, a soothing corporate voice says, "It's now curfew, please return to your homes. This is for your protection. Vishkar, blah 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 blah." And then they use the sonic tech over the speakers to suppress the masses, as opposed to a complete military-style invasion, with patrols walking the streets and stuff. A more subtle takeover, one that could look almost noble, as they also gave the citizens of Rio jobs. However, once again, in reality, they exploited the populace as a cheap labor force. And I wonder what they would need a labor force for, since they can literally make cities out of hard light. However, you do have to be a trained architect to be able to do that, and having seen the corporation's email with Lumerico, I'd wager that Vishkar has their hands in many pockets, and there is always grunt work to be done. Not to mention the people of Rio would probably be forced to work extremely cheap, or maybe even for free, in return for their new homes. But not Lucio Correa dos Santos. He wouldn't stand for it. Somehow Lucio was able to steal Vishkar's sonic tech that had been used to suppress his people. It's unclear as to how he was able to breach Vishkar, but I like to think he used his rising image to his advantage. Maybe Vishkar invited Lucio to a lunch or a meet and greet in hopes to sway him to use his star power to convince the people of Rio that Vishkar was there to do good. And during that time, he hatched a classic heist movie plan with possibly some sketchy contacts he made with his street cred to heist the sonic tech. Hopefully one day we'll find out exactly how Lucio got his hand on Vishkar's tech. Regardless, Lucio took the sonic technology and converted it into a tool to rally his people. He made sonic projectiles and blasts. Remembering his love for hockey, he made hardlight skates that allowed him to wall ride on almost any surface. He put speakers and equipment all over his body, allowing him to have the tools to inspire his people for the upcoming uprising. I'd also suspect that had it been anyone other than Lucio, the uprising wouldn't have happened. His reputation is what got people to pay attention. If it had been good old Joe down on the corner, I would think people would have said, "STFU Joe, you're gonna get us killed." But again, Lucio was becoming an icon. Look at how passionately people take the words of John Lennon and various other musicians. Once more, I'd like to imagine Lucio going around the underground, setting up meetings and trying to organize the uprising. There, a few would voice the idea that maybe Vishkar was a good thing and they should just back down. And Lucio, with his optimistic nature and charisma, gives a historic speech that sways the people's decision to drive Vishkar out of their city. And that's precisely what ended up happening. An uprising broke out led by Lucio, who literally had an aura of music blasting to the crowd as he presumably skated through the uprising, booping Vishkar goons into capacitation. I find it very hard to buy that Lucio would kill in the lore, and probably stopped a few of the more angry Rio citizens from killing some of the Vishkar thugs themselves. With his leadership, they were able to drive Vishkar out of their neighborhoods, and Lucio became a star overnight and a symbol for positive change. As the Vishkar-Lumerico partnership was newsworthy, so was the Uprising in Rio, as Vishkar became under investigation after the events. It's possible that Lucio was mentioned frequently on the news during that time, as afterwards his music skyrocketed in popularity. While he did release a single, Sonos Omnigos, around 2075 that topped the charts, he spent the next 2 years working on his debut album, Synesthesia Auditiva, which if you're one of the lucky few players that was able to get one of the Overwatch recruitment kits, you would score a physical copy of the vinyl containing 2 tracks. When talking about the upcoming album with Atlas News, he said that people were going to do more than hear the music, they are going to see it. Whereas once he was performing locally, he was now filling arenas around the world, and you can even see posters for some of his upcoming shows in the game. With his newfound fame, Lucio realized that he has an opportunity to make a difference and change the world for the better. The Overwatch creative team has said that Lucio is a response to Tracer's declaration that,
"You know, the world could always use more heroes."
He is intended to be an embodiment of the Overwatch setting as a whole. In the aftermath of the Uprising, again, Vishkar became under investigation, and Lucio became so popular that I would imagine it would be a bad PR move to try and go after Lucio, legally or publicly, for the theft, especially if Lucio covered his tracks well enough that they were unable to prove he had anything to do with it. However, this would be a great opportunity to open the door for more lore to connect, specifically with Symmetra. They have a few voice interactions in-game already, and maybe it'd be more subtle if Vishkar sent a lone agent of the company to take the revenge on Lucio instead. Symmetra is already teetering on the morality of her actions, it seems, and I think a personal arch-nemesis relationship between the two would really challenge her ideals. I think it would personally be intriguing if Symmetra was placed in a position to have to kill Lucio. Now hear me out first. Lucio is such a positive force that if Symmetra had to kill him, it could really rattle her to her core, and her ideals of her work with the Vishkar Corporation. It could set up a great redemption arc for the character, if the fanbase ever forgave her, that is. Lucio's death would also have a huge impact on the overall world of Overwatch itself. Look at the death of John Lennon or Martin Luther King.
My friends and I were talking the other day, and we were thinking, comparing Kurt Cobain to Jim Morrison, just because he kind of got the Seattle
into the light.
Into the grunge. He's the one that kind of got Seattle on the map. Yeah, and it's he was just a great performer, and he was really good in concerts, and he had this great music, and now all of a sudden he's gone.
Millions would mourn. People would come together as one. And what if Lucio was somewhat affiliated with Tracer and Winston's reformed Overwatch? I could see it really bringing the new Overwatch team together in the same way Agent Coulson did for the Avengers. And could possibly spark major changes in the world. The guy's on a cereal box, for crying out loud. Not to mention it would follow the classic trope of rock stars passing away before their time, preferably while Lucio is 27, which by all previous rules established is this year sometime. This of course would have no gameplay effects. You would still be able to play Lucio in the game. Or another idea would be if his second album bombed really hard, and it challenged Lucio's own perspective of his optimistic nature. With a first glance, Lucio can seem outlandish compared to other heroes, even ones as eccentric as Diva, but when you really dig deep into what makes Lucio tick, and his motivations, actions, and outlook on life, he's one of the most original and unique hero designs I've ever seen, and just like singing along to a catchy song on the radio, Lucio's positive nature is contagious. And that's about all there is for the history of Lucio. When more information comes out, we'll have to do an update video of some kind, as there's just not a lot of information for these characters at the time. But if you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button, leave a comment below if there's any heroes or maps or anything that you would like to see the history of in Overwatch. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you feel like it, you can follow me on Twitter, where you can see lots of pictures of my cats. As always, thanks for watching, good luck, and have fun.